Good morning. If you're talking about Can Hoca's presentation, take off from there. I'll talk about the reference of the family, and it's an adolescent actually person, and it's defined, and actually this therapy is named as the functional contextualism. This will be sort of a theoretic presentation. With Goethe's words, he says that there is not a system which is not based on the philosophy. The philosophy of science determines the area, and the scientific facts define what has to be sought, and also determines the boundaries of reality, and the discipline which is affected actually follows that. So in a way there is a ground foundation of a scientific study. There's a factuality criteria of each philosophy of science. It is not a result. It is not a result of scientific analysis, but it lays the ground for the scientific analysis. So this actually creates an area of a scientific working area. I'm not going to. There are some epistemologic theories. I'm not going into details of the philosophy of science. I'll talk about pragmatism, which is the basis of ACT, and we can understand the things with its counterparts. So I'll talk about realism as well. Realism is one of the old ancient Greek philosophy. Formism is one of the first scientific approach. According to formism, the reality has some the realities that can be defined. The objective of the analysis is to define the real factors in the world. For formism, in order for us to say this is a ball, we need to come up with the features of the ball, like it's a jumping material made of plastic. So our objective here is categorization and also classification. Modern science is based on Plato and Aristotle. So mostly there is the modern science philosophy is elementary realism, and it's an extension of formism. There's a difference, as you can understand from the word mechanism. A whole can only be formed of some different parts. The reality criteria is a whole of which is composed of the parts of which the presence is indicated. Elementary realism caused the presence of machinery. It affected many other scientific areas, and it also affected medicine. And according to this, a whole can only be can be a form of parts, and the coherent working of these parts working together brings about the wholeness. And there is also the ontological realities. the world can only be known and could have the characteristics which can be divided into parts. Of course, we need to look at how it is reflected in the treatment. Let's say the person has the I thought of I'm not useful, no one loves me. This client actually interprets this as it is a reality. It is not a thought, it is a reality. So when we consider this from the angle of this philosophy, there is the presence, there is such a thought, and it's the evidence of this. The person has some experiences confirming this. His words are actually really right because it has a relationship with the realities. The therapist actually follows the reality and also objects the reality in the logical plane. The reason of this conceptualism is that because we present it to them, there is a mechanistic science affected many other areas, also medicine, and then in medicine there is such an approach. If there is a problem, the problematic part is then what we look for, and then in mechanistic model, in medical mechanistic model, for example, for diabetes, there is a problem with the insulin mechanism, and an intervention to this can bring about the healing. However, in the presence of psychological problems, the approach of taking the mentality as a wholeness and looking for the problematic parts. If we are talking about OCD, we see there are many etiological models. There are some approaches with the biological approach, and there are pathological emotions and impulses could be, and also there are it is explained with the structural model. There are different etiologies, and of course they signify certain types of treatments. However, the healing and the treatment, yes, there is one. However, it is not as apparent as the other one. So contextualism, what kind of a scientific philosophy is this? The basis are pragmatism. In 1942, it was developed by Popper, and the realities are defined through a behavior within a certain context, and the reality is deemed to be a holistic structure. The reality criteria is called as a pragmatic reality. The reality actually serves for a certain purpose. It is historic and it is situational, and as the objective of the analysis was a classification. However, here the analysis objective is to define the action. For example, if we say what is a ball, it will be defined as a thing that we play with my son on Saturday night. So the characteristics of the ball do not affect the definition. The whole informistic structure. Ball was something, a round thing which can jump. However, it is not here. And when you change the context, the definition changes as well. For example, when we say ball, last night, for example, can be a thing that I put between the door to have the wind coming. So I changed the time, I changed the context, so the definition of the ball changes. The commonality between these two definitions is the target and to what extent the ball serves for this target. Functional contextualism as a definition of Hayes. It is a theory which is an adolescent age. In 1982 it was put forward, and since 1990s ACT is presented in clinical practices. It is a special philosophy. As it's in the case in contextualism, there's it's historical and situational. The objective is to predict the behavior and manipulate the behavior. Without determining the targets, we cannot. There is no judgment about whether the behavior is right or not, and the behavior can be accepted as right based on the results. So within this acceptance from fetishism to addiction, if we are making an evaluation based on the result, the concept of right and wrong go away. And when the target is there, then the basis or background is also can be defined. So if we are to make a comparison of what we have told so far in mechanistic opinion, there is an ontological reality. The reality is defined as ontologically. There were the parts, and the automobile was defined as like this in the presentation. However, in functional contextualism, reality is the thing which takes me to my ultimate goal, and the automobile can have different results in the different contexts. As we have pointed out, there is an historic and contextual approach in this science philosophy. The objective can vary, and the objectives, the targets can be interpreted, and it might vary from one person to other. As if we are taking the same example, the previous example, for example, automobile is something that takes me to my home, and after I get home, my target is gone. So why do I actually get home? To spend time at home. So why, when we say why are we trying to spend time at home, there is another target. And when you say what is the objective of this, there is such a different target. So the time and context change the target and also change what you do. And there is an ultimate goal. It is the ultimate goal is an area asked by the person. So the ultimate value is not the target is not discussed anymore, because it is accepted in acceptance and commitment therapy. The motivation source is that actually, and the functionality is addressed within the scope of value, not a target. And the important thing, the event, is the action within the value context. The targets can be discussed, however, values are specific to people. It's about the principles of the person, about how they will lead a life, how they will act. It is just an adjective, being somebody who likes to help, a helpful person, or a hardworking doctor, for example. It's an adjective. In functional, when the behavior In functional contextualism, it covers visible and invisible behaviors, invisible behaviors of the person, the feeling of remembering, just the feeling. These are all events. However, the interpretation of what is not seen does not belong to us. It is based on the client's statements. Unless the client takes it as a value area, we cannot use it, we won't use it. So therapist questions what the behavior is serving for, and as a result of this we have two intentions. The first one is to be aware of the dysfunctional behaviors, and also to help the client to have the value area of values. For example, as you can see in this slide, there might be a person who has such claims, mechanistic opinion, looks at the reason of the problem and how it can solve the problem. There are theories and there are modelings regarding this. It's about the repairment of the broken part. And after repairing this broken part, the person comes back to his own state of mind. Like, I don't want to have the anxiety thoughts. Then when you ask why don't you want to have these feelings, you can see that the person cannot function. For example, I'm not interested in my family. The client wants to get back to life, actually. There is a behavior, and in functional contextualism, we look at where it goes, and we check what the person wants to do and where he wants to be at the end. And within that context, we support the client to continue life within that state of mind. One of the two things is the change of the context. When you say context, everything that can affect the person, every stimulus, and also the attitude of the therapist is within the context of client. So the therapist's attitude actually affects the behavior of the client. And the most important context is himself, for the language and the mental state. So the first intervention of ACT is the intervention in the cognitive process. As there's a pragmatic realism rather than ontologic realism, the content of the thought is not discussed, and the form of the thought is not changed or not tried to be changed. Because the mentality have a tendency to ontologic reality. We have a tendency to find the problem and solve the problem. However, therapy is aontologic. However, it's not anti-ontologic. It does not deny the processes that the client has gone through. For example, if there is a person who has an anxiety with the panic attack, it does not say that it is not logical. However, it tries to find ways of living within that state and tries to prevent that this is a dominant idea in the daily life. One of the other interventions is that there is decoupling. We can call this decoupling as it focuses on the function of the thought. We use this in our formulation, and we help the client to establish the relationship through functionality with that thought. It does not change the form of the thought, but we try to make an intervention to change the functionality. I have tried to explain the functional contextualism. It's been kind of theoretical. However, there are 4 principles: the context, the reality criteria, and also the value, which is the source of this reality. Thank you very much.